Now we are going to discuss and know from this chapter, that is chapter 2, Lost Spring, from Flamingo. Here in Lost Spring we have two different stories which tells the life of two different boys, but the theme is all same. They talk about the marginalized, they talk about poverty, they talk about a life which is filled with misery, but there is still hope, there is still little light in their life with which they are living. They are so much poverty stricken, but still they want to lead a little better life. So here we will come up with two different stories with two different characters. So let us read about the author first, that is Lost Spring, stories of stolen childhood. So the very title I can tell that Lost Spring. Spring is considered to be the best season, and here means the best season is lost from whom? From that children's uh, from that children life, from the I mean the most happiest time of children lifetime. In their lifetime it is this the childhood. So this childhood time is lost. It is lost where? It is lost in poverty, it is lost in hunger, it is lost in the bondages of society. So here about the author Anis Jung, okay, was born in 1964, was born in Rourkela and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers. Anis Jung began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad and has authored several books. The following is an excerpt from her book titled Lost Spring: Stories of Stolen Childhood. Here she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these children to a life of exploitation. So here we will come to know about this exploitation which is being done, which was being done, rather to say, which was being done before the law passed in India, that is the Right to Education and Labours Act. And then child labor was abolished, and there was a new program, or we can say there was a new rule, a new policy that children under 18 will they children of 14 years, till 14 years they must get their basic education there, the school education. So here the first section, that is, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. Why do you do this? I asked Sahib, whom I encountered every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps uh, of my neighborhood. Sahib left his home long ago, set amidst the green fields of Dhaka. His home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. In his mother tells him that is why they left, looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. So here we can see that the author Anis Jung, she has encountered that boy whose name is Sahib, and how they have come from Dhaka and they are the rat pickers. Sahib and his friends, they are rat pickers. I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Go to school, I say glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go. If I start a school, will you come? I ask, half joking. Yes, he says, smiling broadly. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. So, here the promise or the false promise the the author made, and Sahib thought it to be true. And then he asked for that school that he was waiting for, but the author was speechless. She didn't say any word, because her such words to Sahib might have aroused that sudden feelings of going to school and getting education. It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. After months of knowing him, I asked him his name. Sahib Alam, he announces. He does not know what it means. If I knew its meaning, Lord of the Universe, he would have a hard time believing it, unaware of what his name represents. He roams the street with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I ask one. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf, he answers simply. So that is their life. The lifestyle is being discussed now, that they are barefooted and they are rag pickers. They move all around the day. So even if she did, he will throw them off. Adds another who is wearing shoes that do not match. When I comment on it, he shuffles his feet and says nothing. I want shoes, says a third boy who has never owned a pair all his life, traveling across the country. I have seen children walking barefoot in cities on village roads. It is not lack of money but a tradition to stay barefoot. It is one explanation. I wondered if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. So they were so poor that they were so poor that their barefoot resembled what their poverty, definitely, but they took it as their fashion. They liked it, moving around barefooted. So I remember a story. A man from Udupi once told me as a young boy he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town, and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddesses when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddesses had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remains shoeless. So here the author, she is referring a story that once she happened to meet a priest who was also poor, and after a long time he was able to get a shoe, or to buy a shoe for his son. So he was thanking God for it. So the author also thought that, like the priest's son, there are so many other children in her neighborhood who also uh, they also want shoes. They also want a better life. So my acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it. Metamorphically, those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it is no longer empty. In structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water live over 10,000 rack pickers. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their names on voters list and enable them to buy grain. Food is more important for survival than an identity. So that is the basic requirement of any poor family, that they want food and not identity. So as they have come from other country and during the partition, or not partition, but we can say during the riots, due to the circumstances between the two countries. So now as they did not get their identity and they are still living, it has been 30 years that they are living there, but they don't have their identity. So for them, it did not matter any, never it they what mattered to them was food more than identity. Yes. So here we have understood that food is more important for survival than an identity. So if at the end of the day can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. Say a group of women in tattered saris. When I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers, whenever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival, and survival in Simapuri means rat picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions is of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. So this is a very important line, that is garbage to them is gold means garbage to them is gold. It was the only means of livelihood for the whole community. It is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof. But for a child, it is even more. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. So that is very much exciting for Sahib kind. I mean Sahib and his other mates. That is, finding a rupee or a 10 rupee is very much exciting for them. So that's why they scrounge the garbage. So Sahib says, his eyes lighting up, when you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging. For there is hope of finding more. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elders, it is a means of survival. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fence gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. I go inside when no one is around. He admits the gatekeeper lets me use the swing. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. So that means, as he is also very young boy, so he likes tennis. He likes to watch, rather we can say, and he, with his humble request, he can convince the gatekeeper to allow him to use the swing for some time. So someone gave them to me. That is the shorts that they are talking about. Now they're talking about wearing tennis shoes. That is looking very much strange to him. Maybe someone has given him. So he says, in the manner of an explanation, the fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them, does not bother him. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. This morning, Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says, pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees in all my meals. Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master. So, by the end, we have come to know, we have understood that Sahib, that little boy, suddenly he has grown bigger. He has understood that the scrounging the garbage is not going to fulfill his hunger. He has to do something else. So that's why he has chosen to work in a tea stall. At least there he can get some money, he can get food. So that may not be so much enjoyable, or that may not be so much appreciable to him, but that is a need. He has to work for himself and for his family. So from by the end of this story, we have come to know that Sahib, the Lord of Universe, that is Sahib-e-Alam, Lord of Universe, actually the name is totally contradictory with the situation that he has.